So a year ago, you described Ryanair as sort of the unofficial airline of Malta.
Yeah.
A year later, do you still consider Ryanair to be that?
No, we think we're now the official airline of Malta. I'm pleased to say in the last 12 months, we've grown our traffic on and off the island by 24%. We've gone from 3.3 million to this year, 2024, 4.4 million passengers. So we are investing heavily in the island. We're creating hundreds of jobs here. But much more importantly, we're bringing millions of new visitors coming to Malta, not just in the peak 3 months of the summer season, but all year round. At the moment, Ryanair is more than twice the size of KM. I think they'll do about 1.6 million passengers this year. We'll do 4.4 million passengers. And we want to grow that traffic, if we can, double it over the next decade.
And how do you view Ryanair's impact on the local tourism industry in Malta?
I think it's been very beneficial. I mean, the local tourism industry has been good for Ryanair, but we've been very good for tourism. I mean, I think what's critical about Ryanair's business here in Malta is we've based the aircraft here. They operate 12 months of the year. So we're flights going in the autumn, the spring, the winter period, when lots of the charter airlines disappear out of here. So I think it's very important that we continue to grow our business and that we level out or grow the shoulder period and the winter period traffic to and from this island.
Yeah, and after COVID, consumer preferences has changed a bit when it comes to travel. There was a lot of that pent-up demand a couple of years ago, but has that demand kept up or is it now dwindling?
I mean, we've seen it for the last 2 years, in the summer 22 and summer 23, we saw very strong traffic growth. So we were growing traffic about 10%, but prices were up about 20%. So there was very strong kind of recovery travel in 22 and 23. This year's been a bit more challenging. We're still seeing in Ryanair about 10% year-on-year traffic growth, but this year the pricing is lower. So we're seeing pricing down this year between 5 and 10% lower than it was in the summer of 2023, which means people are getting an even better deal flying on Ryanair. They're flying on Ryanair this summer at lower prices than they had last year, but that's why we're still delivering such strong traffic growth. This year, we expect to grow from 183 million passengers last year to 200 million passengers this year, but people are getting a better deal.
All right, and you were recently quoted in Fortune as telling a conference that you could see the prices rising by more than 30% on average during the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it. I think, you've got to be very careful. Firstly, making predictions of what will happen to prices, you're nearly always going to be wrong. But there's no doubt that the airline business is embarking on I think a 5 or 6 year period up to 2030. The manufacturers, Boeing and Airbus, are not able to deliver aircraft or in the numbers that they had originally planned. Capacity, therefore, is very constrained. There's no new entrants coming into the marketplace in Europe. And I think across Europe, you're likely to see zero growth in total seat capacity. Ryanair will still be adding some small growth with our aircraft additions. But where you have zero growth and costs are rising, like fuel costs are rising, airport costs are rising, I think it's likely that fares will gradually creep up over the next 4 or 5 years. I've said our average fare last year was 45. I see no reason why that won't grow to 50, 55, maybe 60 euros over the next 5 or 6 years up to 2030. But I would have said at the start of this year that pricing this summer would be up 5%, and it turned out it was down somewhere between 5 and 10%. So, I can't accurately predict the future, but I think it is likely, given that the constraints on aircraft on the overall fleet in Europe. Eurocontrol, for example, this year say that total seat capacity in Europe is about 97% of where it was pre-COVID. So we still haven't recovered all of the pre-COVID traffic yet. So I think it's likely capacity growth will be slow and therefore pricing will creep upwards.
And what could such a price increase mean for Ryanair as a budget airline? Like, would it pose almost an existential threat? Or
No. I mean, I think a huge opportunity. Now, if you look at the big operators across Europe, I mean, the average seat price in Lufthansa, Air France, BA is 180, 200 euros per seat. The average seat price in Ryanair is 45. So we're more than a quarter, 25% or 75% cheaper than those bigger airlines. Their costs are rising more rapidly than they are in Ryanair. They need to get the fares up even higher. And I think as they drive up airfares above 200 euros average seat price, it's likely that our average fare will creep up behind them. Not as aggressive as they are because we have lower costs and we'll still be growing seat capacity. But I think there's a reasonable prospect over the next 5 years that our average fare will creep up for the next couple of years. But I don't think that will interrupt or change our traffic growth.
All right. And recently, some online travel agencies removed the Ryanair flights from their website. It seems to be quite a long-running spat between Ryanair and these travel agents. What exactly is your perspective on the relationship, and who do you think? I mean, is Ryanair the bigger loser in this?
I mean, we've had a big issue with the online travel agents for about the last decade because they've been scraping, illegally accessing our website, our seats and our fares, and then using clever technology to inflate those airfares and sell them on to. I mean, they market themselves as honest price comparison websites, but when you go to book, they're actually inflating Ryanair ticket prices and inflating the price of Ryanair services. Now, most of them have stopped that. In fact, in the last year, we've now signed up approved OTA agreements with 90% of the online travel agents. As part of that agreement, they agree that they will sell only Ryanair's real prices for fares and for ancillaries, so the customer is getting the Ryanair price. If they want to charge the customer a separate fee for that, that's fine. They can charge a separate fee. But what they can't do is take our fares and our ancillary service and inflate them or add hidden charges to those. So as long as they're transparent and honest about it, then we're very happy to work with them. What we're not happy to do, though, is to work with some of the others who, in our view, are still overcharging passengers, and eDreams in Spain is the most prominent example at the moment. They continue to scrape our inventory and the inventory of other airlines. They pretend or they advertise themselves as offering discounts on flights, and yet every time you look at it and make a booking, they've inflated the cost of the flights, whether it's on Ryanair or on other airlines. And we think the consumer authorities around Europe should act on that. They should be transparent in the pricing they're offering consumers, but they're not.
And I want to ask you about the air traffic control disruptions that we've seen over the years. It's been quite a sore spot for the aviation industry in Europe. What solutions do you believe could effectively mitigate these ATC staffing shortages?
I mean, we think there's two very simple solutions. Firstly, European Commission should mandate that during national ATC strikes, overflights are protected. We don't need French air traffic control to overfly France, but when the French air traffic controllers go on strike, the French cancel all the overflights so they can protect the local French flights. We think that's unfair. If you have a single market in Europe, by all means, the French air traffic controllers have the right to go on strike, but it should be the French flights that get cancelled, not the flights going from Malta to the UK or from Ireland to Spain. And the other thing we require is that if we're paying, as we are, 21% higher air traffic control fees this year than we did pre-COVID, that the air traffic control providers in Spain and Italy and Greece are fully staffed. They continuously are short-staffed, particularly because they won't get people to show up for the early morning flights. The first wave of departures takes air traffic control delays, and then it's impossible for us to run the rest of the day on-time flights. So we simply want properly and fully staffed rosters for air traffic controllers, and if there's a national ATC strike, protect the overflights. The legal mechanism already exists. The Spanish, the Italians, and the Greeks already protect overflights during national strikes, but the French and the Germans don't, and we want that protection of overflights extended to France and Germany. We're calling on Ursula von der Leyen, the new European Commissioner, the new President of the European Commission for the next 5 years. She said she's going to put competitiveness at the heart of the new Commission. Well, start with air traffic control. If we could fix air traffic control, you would eliminate 90% of flight delays for all passengers all year round. Imagine how much better flying would be in Europe if you could eliminate 90% of flight delays. You can. We just need the Commission to take this on and deliver that kind of that reform.
Now, in several major cities in Europe, there's talk of over-tourism and efforts to combat this over-tourism. Do you think these initiatives could negatively affect Ryanair and other budget airlines?
No, I think if you look at these kind of the protests, I mean, Barcelona, Venice, what they're really protesting about is kind of Airbnb, the scarcity of accommodation. I don't think they want to put off tourism or them. They're very welcoming cities for visitors, but they want visitors who are going to come and stay in the city. I mean, in Venice, rightly, they have a big beef about the big cruise ships that arrive, dump everybody into the city for 3 hours during the day and then back on the ship at night. The city gets very little out of those kind of visitors. But they're very keen on, welcoming more Ryanair visitors, not just during the peak summer months of June, July, and August, but all year round. And I do think governments need to do more. I think it's a regrettable development that you have kind of something like Airbnb hawking accommodation to high-spending tourists. That then means it's very difficult for local people or people who've grown up in those localities or people who need to work in the tourism industry in those cities can't afford accommodation. So you have to have accommodation for the people who work in the industry locally, who people who grow up in those towns and cities need to be able to think I can afford, ultimately to buy a flat or an apartment or a house in this city, and they can't all be dumped on Airbnb. I think the simple solution to that is you need much more taxation of Airbnb. You think nothing of staying in a hotel in Malta or in Venice or Barcelona, you pay a tourism tax. People staying in Airbnb should be paying a much higher tourism tax to the city and to the city, so that the people who are coming to visit the cities are making a contribution to the infrastructure that those cities need to allow them to continue to develop.
All right, and just maybe the last comment, what is your general outlook on the future of budget airline in particular, as well as Ryanair?
Well, there is only one budget airline in Europe, that's Ryanair. I mean, all the others are very high-fare airlines who can't compete with Ryanair. I think the future is bright. We have a plan in the next decade to take delivery of 350 new aircraft from Boeing. That should see us grow our traffic from 200 million annually to about 300 million annually. And in Malta, we think there's an opportunity there to grow our business from about 4.5 million passengers a year to maybe double it to 8 million passengers by the early 2030s. So I think the future is bright. People across Europe have more leisure time. Increasingly, they're working from home or they have flexible hours. Incomes are rising. And so that combination of more leisure time, more disposable income means people want to travel more. And I think Ryanair facilitates that. And I think it's also vital for the future of the European Union that we continue to have not just the freedom of movement of people, but also the freedom of movement of people on low-fare airlines like Ryanair.